So if you think further about the mundane things around us, you'll realize that we have tailored the world to our needs when really that's not necessarily how it should be.
Yeah, I feel like we should be in alignment with the earth, not the earth in alignment with us, right?
Know? And that's when now the second level comes into play, because the earth is very sensitive and it's always going to try to rebalance itself. So when we've taken it to this side, all of a sudden, some of the reactions of that is these events end up causing damage to some of these spaces. So it counteracts, because we've pushed it to the limit so far on the other side, it'll do something to try and adjust.
Something catastrophic,
you know, and it affects us. It affects different environments which we've destroyed. And at the end of the day, we're not in balance. We're not in balance.
Eyes open, hearts ready. Welcome to Wellness Deconstructed. I am Zia Jaffer, and together we're stepping into the arena of authentic well-being. Myth-busting, truth-seeking, and definitely life-changing. Break free, live boldly. It's time for a conscious uprising.
Hello, and welcome back to Wellness Deconstructed. I'm your host, Zia Jaffer, and today's guest is a G. He is an emerging young Kenyan leader in conservation and community empowerment, fueled by an unwavering love for the ocean, forests, and life within them. Advocating for sustainability, he drives transformative initiatives that champion community-led conversation, empowerment of local and indigenous food systems, and sustainable policies. His compelling stories and initiatives resonate globally, featuring on platforms such as BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, capturing hearts while bolstering communities and revitalizing ecosystems. And that guy is Ledama. Welcome, Ledama.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you too. I mean, you're such a young kid. I feel old in front of you, and I feel like, what impact have I created in my life? But when I met you for the first time, when we started working together, I was just like, he's such a young kid. What is he going to do? How is he going to help us, So, but when we started talking, I was like, wow, at such a young age, like you've accomplished so much. And I'm like, your parents did a really good job, I'm like, I wish I could do like half of that to get my kid to do something like that. So why don't we start with you telling us, like, what did you study? Like, how did you get into conservation and all these impactful things that you do?
Yeah, so how I got into what I do now has really been a journey. I didn't know I would be here doing exactly this, but always I loved being outside. I would, start of the day, me and my brother would either head out and just spend the whole day climbing trees, being in bushes, and even at school, luckily the school I went to had a nature trail. And break time, you'd find me in the nature trail. Lunchtime, you'd find me in the nature trail. And it's just the fascination with bugs, different plants, but how I feel being in nature.
Yeah.
And more as I went through my life, I realized it's one of the places I can be most myself.
Yeah.
And with that, it also meant when you see it go, there's a certain pain that you feel. Because here's a space that I'm so connected to, which is disappearing. And it's a loss. It's a genuine loss that you feel. And that then sparks the thought, what can I do for this not to happen again? And starting from volunteering in school, at the KSPCA, doing some initiatives for saving forests, and then in university, there was nothing else I was going to study apart from environmental science, because I was really driven to see what I can do and how I can approach that. Because it's not easy, because the realities face you every day. You go from one space where you see a lot of trees and right next to it, it's a lot of trees cut down, or it's a rubbish pile, or you go from a place where you see a clean river and then a little bit further down, it's just plastic, mud. But the one that really got to me is when you see like a dead turtle or a dead animal.
Oh my God.
And so pain, that pain, it moves you to want to do something, but then it comes down to the how. And that's why I wanted to study environmental science. And as theoretical as it was, when I now came back to Kenya to see how I can apply what I've studied, it was also a little bit of, all right, forget most of what you learned. Conservation activities and environmental impact has to be contextual. So you've got to learn how to do it for where you are. Interacting with the communities, where I was so privileged to learn from some community elders at the coast, understand the contextual challenges facing the community. And also one major thing which really shifted the way I think, because conservation is essentially how can we preserve nature and keep it as pristine as possible. But on the other end, there's people who live in balance with nature. So you can't just separate the two. And one thing that an elder said to me, and one of my mentors, is when approaching conservation, you always need to remember you can't eat conservation. So whatever solutions it is that you find, they need to be able to also nourish the bodies, hearts, and minds of people as well. And that formed my whole approach to conservation thinking.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you went to school in Kenya, and then you did university in SA, right?
In SA, in Cape Town.
Okay,
yeah,
nice.
Beautiful place.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's really nice that you said like you have to adapt yourself to wherever you are, right? Because the land here in Kenya, the ecosystem, everything is different from what you might have learned there. So you had to relearn and rediscover the methods to use, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that you said it's not just conservation of the forest or the ocean, but you also have to consider the community. So my team was educating me about the 3 C's of sustainability, and the community bit came in, and I was like, yeah, that's not something I've thought about. And you brought it up, and it's so important because you cannot displace them. Because I feel like the Maasais and whichever community is there, they've lived there for generations, right? And they're also suffering, isn't it? Because of the impact that climate change is having on whether it's on the animals in the conservancy or whether it's the greenery with the forest and stuff. So it's important for us to like think about that.
Yeah.
And your approach includes that, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So you talked about the ocean and the forest mainly, right? So which one have you worked on the most, or which one are you passionate about the most?
That's a tough question. You can't be asking me this.
Okay, pick one to start with. Okay, we'll go to the other one.
So for me, it's equally balanced.
Yeah.
And it's usually when I enter that ecosystem that I remember, I'm like, oh, this is why I love this place so much. Whether it's I go diving and going down, and then I see the coral reef and the fish, the colors, the different creatures around me. I'm like, okay, this is my happy place. This is my happy place. And then on the forest side, especially one of the most beautiful places in which I do my work, which is a place called Mount Nero, is as you're approaching this mountain, which is not only sacred, but beautiful, you start to feel not only how special the place is, but the kind of vegetation it has, which is so diverse. And then the scenery as well, the different types of rocks and rock formations. And then you climb up the mountain, and halfway through the mountain, you look back. And then I'm like, okay, this is why I love being here. So it's really about when I'm in these places, I fully get immersed in them. The ocean was where I first started my professional work. And that was working with one of the longest standing locally managed marine areas in the Western Indian Ocean. Wow. It's a community which has started by protecting 30 hectares of its marine space, where everyone in the community got together and said, we're not going to fish here. And within a couple of years, this place, which used to be completely diminished of fish, coral gone, burst into life. So you've got almost a 400% increase in fish mass that was there. The corals were back and lively, and as soon as you even dip your head underneath the water, even in the mannerisms of the fish, you can see that they're comfortable in this space.
They're happy.
They're happy. And so my first job was to see how to sustain such an initiative, but also to look how to expand it. And because such an approach to conservation was not initially recognized in law, it meant that the initiative was fully driven by the community and the community itself. My job was to see how to help it be a collaborative initiative. Government, community, private stakeholders, bring everybody together to not only protect this space, but a wider space. And within that, it was within a year, 38 meetings, sometimes by the beach, sometimes underneath trees, just with community members, with elders, women groups, youth groups, talking and understanding. And that's when I also came to love people, the people part of conservation, because conservation doesn't happen without people.
Totally.
So
people are the ones that are contributing to like the killing of the ocean and the forest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine if you are able to change
The mindset,
mindsets. And that's usually one of the pinnacle points of system craft, is how starting with the mindset. And while also talking with the fishermen, the different stakeholders and groups, I had the chance to be snorkeling in one of the most beautiful places to go snorkeling, I would say, in the world, to go diving. And sometimes you see your dolphins, you see turtles. And I even made a friend's turtle. This may sound crazy, but starting off a morning and you're going snorkeling, you know where you'll find the turtle. So you go see where he is. Comes out. At first, he was a little bit shy when he came to the protected area. He's a hawksbill turtle, where they're an endangered species. And to see an endangered species come to a place that you're protecting, it gives you a sense of affirmation. So that sort of experience is why I love the ocean. And it's a whole new world that not many people have the ability to see. And I realized that it's a privilege. The fact that I can be able to go down and see that world is an absolute privilege that not many children along the coastline or even in Kenya have the opportunity to do so. And if there's a way in which I could bring that awareness to the next generation, say that, it's not just water that you see, but underneath the water is the most beautiful world that also contributes to the life that you live. The ocean is one of the biggest carbon sinks for the world. So it's a barrier against some of the worst impacts of climate change. But not many people know how dynamic, how powerful, but also how delicate it is. So that's when I also realized creating awareness, be it through films, be it through education programs, going to schools, telling stories, bringing the next generation closer to what our ocean is, what it does for us, and how beautiful it is. That became a massive passion of mine. And simultaneously, on the other end, when it comes to forests, firstly, it just gives me peace of mind. Being in a forest, you can slowly feel angst just going away. And then luckily, I've been able to get the chance to do this project in this beautiful place I was telling you about, Mount Nero. And firstly, when I went there, not only was I taken back by the beauty of the place, but also the power of the people that are there. Started with one stroll, and you're like, okay, how much more diverse can this place be? You turn a corner around, like a number of shrubs, and then it's a cliff, and then it's a waterfall. And I'm like, oh, yeah. How about that? And then you climb up a little bit this way, and then you see a huge array of canopies. And I'm like, so you really can find such a diverse range of biodiversity here, of vegetation here. But as I was being taken to the forest, the person who was taking me, Lishorowa, he was just telling me, oh, this is a plant we use when someone is feeling like this. This is the
dawa,
plant. Yeah, dawa. And at that moment now, you know, I was drawn into a place that I'm like, this place not only needs to be protected, but I would love to see the community also continue to preserve this wonderful interaction they have with this space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it when you came back after your first stroll. You had so much to tell us. Like, you know, there's water right there. Like, you just move a rock in the water. I'm like, what? How does this guy know so much? You know, and like how in like a stroll, you hiked for like half a day, I think. Yeah. And like you had so much information and it was so exciting to hear like, okay, this is what he discovered. This is what he discovered. And we have been, thanks to you, have been able to do a lot there, right?
Yes.
Like, so why don't we talk about, let's start with the forest since we're talking about that project. So I know Mount Nero is like a spiritual mountain or a hill for the community that lives there. So it matters a lot to them to have somebody help them conserve and develop that area, because they know when we went there for the first time, they hadn't had rain for like years on end. Yeah. And then when we went, it poured so much that we thought like our event was going to be a flop there. But then in 30 minutes, all the water just seeped in. And I'm like, wow, this land was really thirsty. And there was no animals there. It was so dry. The community was suffering and they needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with you telling us, like, what was the state, like, that climate change or had caused to them? Like, what was their condition and how were you able to contribute to the improvement?
So the state of the region, not just the area, it was quite dire, because they had just come off a 4-year drought. Wow. And with such an intense drought, not only does it mean that the few spots, remaining places where water still was there, become points of conflict. And so you have everyone now fighting to be able to get this water, or you now have to ration it at such a deep level where what you can do with it is very, very little. You can't grow any food. So that means it now ends up being a food issue. You can't be able to do some things which relate to cleanliness. So that means it now touches on health, sanitation. So from this water issue, there's now so many other factors at play. And that also, it demoralizes at the self level. So specifically to this area now, Nero, what you found was the river which supplies the whole village with water was very low. So you have days of rationing, you have days where, you know, people are genuinely going thirsty. You can't water your shamba, you can't get food, which means food they now get or have to buy it from the near town. And with buying food from the near town, you have to pay for transport, which means that the cost of food goes up within the area because you can't grow as much.
And it's so remote as well. Like they don't have access to like shops or anything there. Yeah.
Exactly. So on all ends, it was very constraining. But also what shone through was the resilience of the people. And for me, that's what convinced me that despite it being a tough starting point, we are still going to succeed. And starting with the water aspect, you know, where looking at the river, you could see it was very low and it was just one pipe, one small pipe, which feeds. It goes all the way to the village and it feeds 2 tanks in the village for everybody and then 1 tank in the school for the whole school. And that wasn't enough, but did that need to be the case? That was the first thing that we wanted to look at. How can we improve water? Because as mentioned, when you improve water, not only can you improve health through sanitation, cleanliness, but also you can improve how you grow things and just in general state improves.
It's a basic necessity, right? Like what, like imagine not having water, it affects so many different areas of your life, and just giving people access to that one thing properly can actually create like a circular improvement, right?
Even thinking, cognitive state.
Yeah.
You can't.
Hydration is so important. We all talk about it.
And yet that wasn't a given for a whole community.
Yeah.
So to be able to change that, we saw, and this is one of my favorite bits of what I do, is looking at a situation and seeing further than just the surface. And through looking at the kinds of rocks that they had in the mountain, because this mountain has some of the oldest rocks in the country. You know, it's ancient. So it's also got a lot of cracks and differentiation between hard rock and soft rock, which can be worn away easily. So over time, within the whole structure and foundation of the rock, through all these cracks, water had seeped into all these cracks, and the mountain, in a way, was storing all this water.
Taking it all in for itself.
Taking it all in, but in a very, very beautiful way.
Yeah.
It was able to continue to slowly give back even when they were not getting rain for 4 years. So that's the other side of things. You know, it was able to continue to supply the community, and it was now seeing how can we be able to make that more efficient in a sustainable way. And also, how can we be able to improve the state of vegetation? Because with the drought, there's also such a huge loss of biodiversity. And a lot of vegetation dried up. And when vegetation dries up, it means the animals that rely on eating the vegetation also go away. So then that's why we looked at what can we do to conserve the forest. On an assessment of the forest, we find out that there are some species of plants that have not been recorded anywhere else on the planet. So that's how unique this place was. And for me, I'm like a geek. So I find all these things so amazing. And it also was giving merit to why we should protect the place, but also realizing that it was not anything new, that for generations and generations, this community has been protecting this forest. It's just in recent times, with some of the developments in the world and the challenges that have come to the area, it's forced situations of having to cut down trees for fuel, use it for timber. So it's now not saying that we're bringing a new approach, but how can we bring back this innate aspect of conservation and sustainability in a way of life which was so sacred. And it also comes with just appreciating the power of the people and the culture that they have. And that's where the education part comes in. How we work with the school, some of the programs where we are trying to bring it more into nature. You can imagine learning in a classroom which is wearing down, it's a little bit dark, and then how the focus will be, concentration, and then there's like 50 of you in a classroom like that. So just seeing how we can be able to now utilize the beautiful space outside through nature's classroom. So that's some of the initiatives we do. So being outside, this is proven, you know, you become more active, you become more aware. The sky and the sun is shining, the trees are there. And then that plays into our initiative called transformative learning through theatre, games, and storytelling. And this is storytelling around their Indigenous stories, their cultural stories. Theatre to show some of the work and the actions they can do in their context and teach their neighbors. And the games, because games are a huge part of a child's development. And if you interweave educational aspects through games, it'll stick with them for a very long time. And what was so amazing about some of these games that we had now started doing in this program is even the kids who aren't able to go to school because they may have to take care of cattle or livestock, when the kids at school who've learned these games go back to their homestead, they play these games with the kids who aren't able to go to school, and the knowledge is transferred. And for me, that was just so powerful, such a powerful moment. So when you see this sharing of knowledge, unintentional, but through something which is so enjoyed among children, it really also shows you the power of putting thought into the work that you do in this space for it to be contextual. Whether you're in the ocean, whether you're in the forest, whether you're in the desert, conservation starts with the people. Conservation starts with a specific space.
It's so important. It just makes me think like it's so important to give people the basic necessities, and then they're so much more open to actually using it mindfully and giving back to the earth, because that's where they've come from anyways. And especially remote communities are living fully dependent on the nature around them, right? Like how you said, they know the plants that are used for dawa, and they rely on the water from the river. So they're so close to the earth that it's not just one-sided effort would not make any sustainable or long-term effect or change. So about the school, the community is small, but there's a lot of kids there. There's like over 1,000, I think?
No, actually. So in the school, there's around 273.
Oh, okay.
But there's so much more which are not in school.
Yeah, because they cannot afford to because of the cattle.
Yeah.
Because they have to take care of the cattle so that they can earn money or use it to sell later and sustain. Yeah, okay. I thought they were more. I don't know why. But how big is the community in Mount Nero? So maybe I had that number.
Around 1,400.
Okay, maybe so that's how I confused it. Yeah. Okay, nice. So what have you been able to create for them now, apart from the schooling?
So
I know something with water also, right? We did the new piping and the tanks and stuff.
So on the water side of things, we're now collaborating. So firstly, everything that we do is in a collaboration with a community team, because at the end of the day, this needs to be something we do together, something that needs to be taken up from within and sustained. And it can only be sustained by the people who are there, who are invested in it. So each initiative we've paired with a community group. For the water security, we collaborate with a group called the Water Resource Users Association. And we first of all sat down and we're like, what's the plan here? We've been lucky to get rain, but will we always be this lucky? We've seen how things are changing this fast. So number one, when rain comes around, what can we do to catch it and store it? Gutters, so using gutters so water doesn't just trickle off the houses and go onto waste, but how can we catch it, store it? How can we improve the piping so there's less waste from the pipes and water leaks that take place? How can we improve capacity storage of tanks? But more importantly, how can we improve governance, the decisions that are made around water distribution to be fair, to be equitable, to be sustainable? And time, discussion, and opening up to each other, it goes a long way. So now setting this direction and coming to have these shared values in how we treat the water, how we use the water, has now started to have that wider impact. So not only are we storing it, but we're having more sustainable use. And all led by the community group. We're just there to support, we're there to lift up, we're there to listen, we're there to empower.
And to teach them the right ways, right?
Yeah.
And then, okay, I'm sure that helps with food growing as well
it
for
does.
them. Agriculture, right?
Yeah.
So now they're all fed well, at least, I'm hoping.
It takes time. It takes time because it's also culture and practice, whereby farming is not the most popular way of accessing food in that region. It's usually livestock, meat, cattle, milk. So there's a little bit of a shift in perspective and thinking that needs to take place to embrace the land and what the land has to offer, to grow what you can grow there. And I remember when I first got there, I like to get my hands a little bit dirty. So because to know a lot about the place and its history, you look at the soil. The soil can tell you a lot. I'm not just looking at sand. But so look at the soil, and it's so rich. So we take a little bit back to test. And this is some of the richest soil that I've ever come across. So you can grow a lot there. You can grow so many different kinds of things, from papaya, guava, dragon fruit. But then the issue becomes water. So now how can you pair what we're doing in terms of the water security to feed into now some of the food security practices that we do? So it's also now this consciousness of sustainable ways that you can do gardening, that you can do permaculture, agriculture. So using minimal water, ensuring that's economically viable and ensuring that it's socially contextual. So you're not just going to do a whole plantation of tea, but you're doing the vegetables which improve nutrition. You're growing things which work well with the soil and the seasons. You're growing things which also the excess can be sold and people will buy. So it's thinking at a very holistic scale. But then it all starts with the knowledge transfer. And that's why it's been so amazing to have the support of wonderful partners in this project, Ali Jaffa, Desert Rose, and also a lot of my friends who here, you're going into the middle of nowhere. I'm like, guys, I'm not going to the middle of nowhere. There's an amazing project which is happening here. And this is one of the situations that going on. The soil is like this, the food is like this. What techniques can we use? They tell me about it. I go there, we share it, we do a workshop. And it's also the same thing with the conservation side of things, using the knowledge of a wider community of conservationists in Kenya and the support of such amazing people to now transfer knowledge, create this base foundations of training, learnings, not only for them, but also I learned so much. I am a student for life. But from here, after you've created this knowledge, not only can they be able to use that for themselves, they can pass it on. They can go create a skill, they can get a job as well. And so from there, it now grows into so many different aspects of livelihood. Yeah.
And I love that we have the lodge there and I can't wait for it to start, because I feel like once they're growing these things, the lodge can use it and it will create like an income generation facility for them, like that they don't have to go far to sell these things. And the more we can use at the lodge and the more we can empower the community also to grow themselves, whether it's livestock, because we can use chicken, goats I think we already use, the milk from the cows, the bhoga, just the basics, right? The vegetables and stuff. So it'll be so nice to have that sustainable, I don't know how to say it, but like this is
circular.
Yeah, like a system going on, right? Like we're supporting the community, they're growing these things, but we're using them to serve our guests as well. And it also helps like that we know where the food is coming from. It's not like all the way from Nanyuki or Naivasha that has to go through like trucks and use fuel and all these things and then come to us. So it's cleaner. Because of course we have sustainable practices. We're not spraying them with pesticides and stuff, right? And it also has a story that we're supporting a community, which is so much more fulfilling than just like saying, okay, this is clean food, but we don't know where it comes from,
And it's traveled less distance.
Yeah, totally. So it helps the earth anyways. So I heard you say like the state of that place was really dire when you started off. What do you think affects, like what is the major cause of climate change like this that has created such extreme conditions in certain parts of the world or certain parts of Kenya?
So there's 3 levels we can look at it from. Starting from the more global level, where increase of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, the thinning of the ozone layer, which means more radiation coming in, which means the earth and our oceans are heating up, which also means weather patterns are affected. You won't get rain when you expect rain. You won't get cool seasons when you expect cool seasons. You'll suddenly get a flash of rain somewhere and it causes a flood. And it's almost like a positive feedback. It gets worse, and by it getting worse to this state, it means that it just keeps eating to each other. And it's this diversity in weather patterns is what now causes some of these events, because you're getting longer seasons of drought, shorter seasons of rain, and when it does, it's intense and you're not ready for it.
Yeah, you cannot utilize all of that we get, right?
So it's compounding. Then the next level is the social. As humans, I would say over our time on this world, we've now become more output driven, from where we used to live in connection, in balance with nature, taking what we need. There was this shift to cultivation. We want to grow everywhere we can, farm so we can have more. And for the first time ever in humanity, after this drive to grow everywhere and have more food, we had excess. And then with excess, you now have more people. And with more people, that means, we need more space. That means we need to cut down more environment. So our lifestyles, the roles that we play as humans, it's changed. So no longer in balance with nature, but it's very driven towards accumulation, towards
greed, I would say.
Greed.
Yeah. We're so greedy as humans. Yeah. And I also feel like the demand, because of the population increase, like you said, like there's just more and more people. So the overpopulation of the earth is also causing us to like rip off the natural resources for our own selfish interests.
It's a very, very consumer. It's a very consumer society. If you think of, all right, stop. I've just had a sip of water. Where did this water come from? And if you think about that process, it's like, okay, it came from a tap in my house. Now, what supplies the tap? Some people will not even know that question. But if you think further, it's like, oh, it's a dam. That dam may be stopping a river somewhere. So if you think further about the mundane things around us, you'll realize that we have tailored the world to our needs, when really that's not necessarily how it should be.
Yeah, I feel like we should be in alignment with the earth, not the earth in alignment with us, right?
And that's when now the second level comes into play, because the earth is very sensitive and it's always going to try to rebalance itself. So when we've taken it to this side, all of a sudden, some of the reactions of that is these events end up causing damage to some of these spaces. So it counteracts, because we've pushed it to the limit so far on the other side, it'll do something to try and adjust.
Something catastrophic,
And it affects us. Yeah. It affects different environments which we've destroyed. And at the end of the day, we're not in balance. We're not in balance. And you can look at it at a very wide level, but also at a personal level. The lives that we live, how in touch are we with the spaces around us? How often do we stop and think, where did I get this from? What's behind it? It's so fast. It's very much where 20% of our time where we get to ourselves, the rest is working. Some people, or most people, that's the case. But even within that 20% of the time, it's still within a very materialistic space that has been created. So one of the most powerful actions I've seen that you can start to counteract this is just being still within yourself and now looking to connect to the different things around you, where they came from, who was involved, what might have happened? What's the story? What's the story of this pillow right here that I'm sitting on?
Yeah.
And it takes you to be connected with the wider world around. And it brings you closer to being a human being and less like a, human economist or, homo economist or something like that, which is a new thing that we're becoming. So we need to come back to ourselves in that essence as human beings. Then the third layer of, why climate change is happening and the impacts of it as well come down to the world changes. The world changes. And this is now looking at over a wide period of time. We go through cold glacials and interglacials, which just means thousands and thousands of years of it being in a cool state, thousands and thousands of years of it being in a warm state. So there's the social aspect, the scientific aspect, and the wider global aspect.
That's so interesting. But I loved what you said, like how, like just looking at the mundane things, like just creating that awareness about where this single thing might have come from and how much that thing had to go through to get to you and how much resources extra that it has to use, apart from ripping off a certain thing, like you said, blocking a river. It also had to use so many other resources like getting filtered and getting into the tap, like all that infrastructure, everything that has been contributed to bringing that water through the tap into my glass, right? So it's not just about ripping the resources off, but it's also like additional overexploitation of resources that are contributing to just making sure we have clean water here, like sitting not living by the river, but sitting here drinking in the comfort of our own home. It makes me think like we've become so selfish. We never think like even twice before buying something off the stores or consuming something. Well, there is more awareness now, thanks to people like you. But it's just sad that we see these things.
That's why we can't neglect the effort that we put into our children, the youth, and the future generation. Because imagine if the next line of leaders enter these positions of decision-making with this consciousness, this wider appreciation of what's around, where it came from. The decisions will be made in a way that it not only is in touch with the people that it serves, but the environment that it comes from. And that is one of my biggest hopes. That's something which I really want to be relentless about. How can we support education systems to be more ingrained with the wider whole and connection of life on this earth and what it means?
Yeah, and I guess it all starts with creating the awareness, right? That what is it that you living on this earth is, what impact is it creating on not just the land, but also the air, the ocean, and everything else. And I feel like now slowly the school systems are integrating a little bit of consciousness here and there to just like spark that, or just like start that movement slowly as the kids are younger, so that when they're older, they can make that decision or choose to learn more, right? Or create more awareness around it. So I hope we can instill that more and more into the systems. But I guess it also starts at home. Like now, because we're aware, we're teaching the kids at home. So it's like an all-encompassing effort that we have to put into. I feel like just one education system or just one person at home cannot create this change. Okay, yes, they can, but it's when everyone contributes to it, it has a lasting impact, right? Moving to the ocean side, what do you think is the leading cause there of like the coral dying, the fish not growing back in time, or the pollution of the ocean?
So the ocean is getting warmer. And corals are such sensitive creatures. Corals are alive. And I would say they're fussy. They want the perfect temperature. They don't want the water to be too murky or dusty. And with even a three or less degree change in water temperatures, corals start to bleach.
Wow.
So what
By
does
bleach, you mean like losing its color?
losing its color? And why does it lose its color? So corals are part of something that's called a symbiotic relationship. Corals are formed of many coral polyps, and inside coral polyps you find these algae, which are also very much alive. The algae come and live inside the coral polyp. So the coral provides the algae with a home, and the algae provides the coral with food. So it's an exchange, a symbiotic relationship. And that food and that algae called zooxanthellae, it brings color to the coral. So when the home gets too hot, the algae are like, okay, peace, I'm out. And so that means the coral's without food for as long as these algae are outside. And it's got around a week, give or take, where if the algae don't return, then the coral then dies. So it goes from bleaching to death, and caused by this increase in temperature of ocean. Then you've also got ocean acidification, where the ocean pH, acidity, is getting higher and higher and higher. This is also very damaging to the coral. It's damaging to other ecosystems within the marine space and in the ocean. And also, our fishing practices have gotten quite out of hand. There's this one app which you check it and it lets you know how many boats or fishing vessels are out there in the ocean at this moment. I think it's called like Boat Tracker, or I'll get the name and I'll let you know. But the first time I saw it, just seeing the sheer amount of vessels out there, we are plundering our oceans. And what happens is when you fish, so when a fish gets to this big, it means that it can give birth to thousands and thousands of offspring. But when a fish is this small, it means it can give birth to less than 1,000 or even in the hundreds. So if we're catching fish that are this small at such a high rate, it means that they don't get the chance to get to full maturity, and produce at what's needed. So we're cutting off the line at the very beginning. So over time, you've just got a drastic decline, because not only can't they produce more, but they're getting less and less and less. So sustainable fishing practices and the lack of that is a serious issue, very, very serious issue. So no coral, less fish, and these are the things which keep the ocean going. They keep the key interactions, key dynamics in the ocean flowing. And what does the ocean do? The ocean is one of our biggest safeguards against climate change. So in essence, we are eating into ourselves. But that comes from a lack of awareness. Not everyone knows how important the ocean is, how delicate it is, how one action, even inland, even with us here in Nairobi, some of our actions here end up affecting the ocean. So it's a long line of thought. But just like how we thought about where did this water come from? Let's think back at the ocean. How far will our influence reach? Or where did this impact come from? And trace it back to us or where I am, and then make the decision. What can I do today that will help that dynamic change?
Yeah, I feel like there's a dire need of this awareness and thinking before consuming. So that you can really feel guilty before you consume that thing, and be like, okay, maybe if I can avoid it, let me just take that step away. You said something about the ocean acidification.
Yes.
How does that contribute? Like, I know you said the ocean is getting warmer. That's because the earth is getting warmer with the greenhouse gases and stuff. But what disturbs the pH level of the ocean?
We are dumping so much into our oceans.
Okay. Like all the garbage.
All garbage, effluent, waste from some of the industrial activities that we do. It's just like pump. And it's like, we put it in there, out of sight, out of mind.
But it's all toxic waste as well. That like, okay, now I get it. And that just disrupts the pH level.
It disrupts the pH level.
Yeah, and I feel like also the fish are eating that.
Yes.
And then we're eating those fish.
Yeah. And then...
Disgusting.
So also with all that waste going in there, it's a lot of plastic. So you've got plastic in the ocean and it's being washed around, hitting on different things that are there. And over time, it breaks down into small particles and it breaks even further down into microplastics. And microplastics go all over our ocean. And they go into fish, they go into coral, they go into the turtles that I love. To this point, you find microplastics in a lot of the fish that are caught,
So basically we're eating microplastic that we're actually dumping into the ocean.
Yes. So we think we're like throwing it away out of sight, out of mind, but it comes around.
Yeah.
It comes around.
We're going to pay for it all because it's going inside us.
Yeah. But what is also tough is the people who rely on this fish for their livelihoods, these coastal communities. They didn't ask for this, but they're on the front line of bearing the brunt of these impacts. And that's where now humanity has to come into play again. Understanding that I can be here and, someone else can be far away, even if it's on a different continent. But somehow our actions need to be kind to each other.
Yeah, we can't be selfish and just think about ourselves, right? This makes me sad.
But there are hopeful stories.
Yeah, I feel like we are making the change slowly but surely.
Yeah.
It started. It has started somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Thanks to people like you and everything that you're doing. So before we end, there was such a powerful conversation. What are some of the ways people can help you with? Like contribute to the conservation projects that you're doing, whether it's in the ocean, forest. I know we didn't get to talk about the farming stuff that you did in the coast as well for the women of the village. But what are some of the ways that people can contribute or help you, whether it's volunteering or anything?
I would say, first of all, it's being aware of what's going on. If we can be in touch with some of the impacts, even just around your environment and your space, get in the know.
Start at home.
Start at home, get in the know. Secondly, there's so many wonderful stories of hope out there, of communities doing great things. Look for those stories. One of the things I'm doing at the moment is some films with CNN on powerful grassroots stories in climate change. And don't look outside, look in your community for these heroes. Support them, empower them, and be a part of their journey. So find out what's going on in your community, in your space, who's doing good, learn and be a part of it. And number 3 is, with the initiatives that we do, wherever it is, whether you're at the coast, whether you're in Nairobi, whether you get the chance to visit beautiful Mount Nero, come volunteer, come get involved, volunteer. And if it's at the school, even just the time, even whether it's a donation of books, pens, learning materials, or football, it goes a long way. It really goes a long way. For some of us, it may be small, but it's part of catalytic change, just in the way that they go about, their learning experience. That's big. And get in touch, get together, get going.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. That was really cool. Before we close, a little rapid fire question round so that the audience can get to know you a little better.
Okay.
It'll be quick and they're not difficult questions, don't worry. What is one simple change that people can make to live more sustainably?
Reuse. See what you can reuse. Yeah.
And what does sustainability mean to you in terms of like your own well-being?
My state is very much interlinked to the environment. That's where I get my food. That's where I get my water. That's where my clothes come from. Everything. The relationship between the lives we live in nature, it's so intertwined. So if nature goes away, that means all the things I need go away. So how can I live my life in a way that feeds back to this thing which is giving me so much?
Totally. I love that. How do you incorporate sustainable practices in your daily life?
First of all, once again, the reuse thing. I like to grow. I believe I've got a green thumb. And yeah, just trying to know where my food comes from. And especially when you've been to a lot of these areas which have very little, just being conscious about the water, how I use my water, the waste, where am I throwing my waste? And I don't know, you've asked me a question that I felt would be so easy, but I'm like, it's a lot of what I do is just intertwined with my work. Yeah,
because that's your life, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool. So what is your go-to eco-friendly product or habit? Not habit, but product.
Reef safe sunscreen.
Very interesting. It's just the zinc and titanium ones, right? Those are reef safe.
Yeah.
What is your one daily non-negotiable habit for your well-being?
Exercise. No, music, creating music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And would you rather sleep for an hour or read a book for an hour?
Sleep.
Alone time or play a board game?
It depends what day.
Okay. Netflix show or YouTube channel? I guess when you're in the wild, you don't need neither. So
watching nature and doing my own commentary.
Play a sport or do a workout?
Sport.
What's your personal mantra or like affirmation that keeps you going?
Kindness doesn't cost a thing.
And what's one piece of advice that you could leave our audience with that is looking to start on their journey of sustainability?
You don't have to start with something big. Start small. Start with something that you know and just get going.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And as an appreciation gift, we have a little
wow.
eco-friendly gift hamper for you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here and sharing about everything.
Yeah.
Like, you have been an inspiration for a really long time since we met the day. And I'm like, I want my kid to be like you, like I said. And I'm sending them to you as soon as they're on holiday so that you can take them and mentor them so that maybe they can learn a little bit from you.
It'll be a pleasure.
And I'm sure even if they can like replicate a little bit of that when they grow up, I guess they will be able to make some impact.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. And thanks to the team.
Thank you for watching yet another episode for me. This one was really powerful. I know I say that a lot after all of my episodes, but this was really, really good. I hope you really enjoyed it. Remember, like, comment, share, and subscribe because your support means everything to us. Until we meet next time, keep prioritizing your well-being.